distinguished guests, and honored colleagues. It's my distinct privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today, Admiral Samuel J. Paparo, the commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command. Admiral Paparo assumed his command almost 1 year to the day. He had his ceremony that turned over command of U.S. Indo-PACOM, where he leads the oldest, largest unified combat command with responsibilities for all U.S. military activities across more than half the Earth's surface, stretching from the west coast of the United States to the western border of India and from Antarctica to the North Pole. There's much I could say tonight about Admiral Paparo, but I was under strict orders to keep it short. And when you have 130 soldiers and civilians under your command, you obey the order. A strategic thinker with a master's degree from the National War College, Admiral Paparo brings unparalleled expertise on the complex security dynamics of the Indo-Pacific region during his pivotal moment in history. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our friend, Admiral Paparo.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Dimitri Sevastopoulos from the Financial Times. Irish, despite the name, and tonight we may need an Irish accent interpreter and potentially a Pennsylvania, kind of Philadelphia area interpreter. They'll be provided if you have any questions. Admiral Paparo, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm going to start off with one softball. I know you love softball questions. What advice did Admiral Aquilino, what did Long say to you when you took this job, and have you followed his advice?
He said, you're ready for this, and this could happen on your watch.
And what did this mean?
Conflict in the Western Pacific, most likely over Taiwan. And we're close enough that we can speak in metaphors. I knew what this is.
So we're going to obviously get to Taiwan in a little bit. I'm not going to ask you to predict a year, but I will just say that the only year that hasn't been out publicly by a senior admiral or senior general in the last few years is 2026. So let's watch next year very carefully. But before we get into the kind of the different countries in the region, you've been in the job for a year. Give us an assessment of how the region looks to you today compared to a year ago.
Yes, and some may you hear the metaphor "boiling the frog." Well, it's a rapid boil. You notice the change, and so we've just seen in all of the actions of the People's Republic of China that you see what was a 1-brigade joint exercise in 2021, or a 6-brigade joint exercise in 2022 was a 42-brigade exercise in 2024, which include 2/3 of the amphibious fleet with hundreds of amphibious combat vehicles in the water, breaching barriers, breaching obstacles, and then moving on to military operations under urban terrain. You've heard me say it before, but the depth and the breadth of the PRC's training and rehearsals and the extent of the geography that they're operating and the greater weight of operation with, for instance, Russia, further afield and in larger formations, and you just see that steady flow. And then more episodic pressure operations around Taiwan, closing into the contiguous zone. These are rehearsals for selective blockade, quarantine, and then we're seeing rehearsals across the board. And so that number from 1 to 6 to 42 are step-level changes in the environment. And the relationships are changing as well. And so you'll know of North Korea's provision of troops, of artillery shells, of KN-24 missiles to Russia with the hope of gaining concessions on the way back. and then the greater partnership between Russia and the PRC, all of it is palpable over the last year.
And just one housekeeping thing which I neglected to say is we're actually on the record tonight, and we're going to have about 40 minutes of conversation on the stage, and then we will open it up to the floor for Q&A. So please think of some good questions for Admiral Paparov. We agreed that, right? We're good?
Yes, yeah.
Just checking.
No, let's do it. Gary Gilmore's last words.
I mean, what could go wrong? Just on rehearsals, I mean, you said in Hawaii several months ago, for the first time, I think, publicly, that these are not exercises, these are rehearsals. How are those rehearsals changing? Like, what are they rehearsing specifically? And are the things they're rehearsing expanding? And how close are their rehearsals to what they would need to do to take Taiwan, notwithstanding the fact that it would be a very hard thing to do?
Yes. I see them rehearsing, almost the entire range of military operations, such as small island seizure to demonstrate capability and will. And you'll know of the islands, specifically Wuchou, Protus Reef, Ituaba, Matsu, Jinmen.
These are the outer islands around Taiwan.
Yes, yeah. And some of them are outer Taiwan and quite inner to the People's Republic of China. And then you see blockade rehearsals, and both selective blockade, which would interdict certain commodities that would put pressure on Taiwan with the hope of some small concession of the autonomy that Taiwan enjoys now, all the way to the full blockade that they would effect. And then, at the largest range, as I discussed, you see full, complete joint rehearsals, including some very compelling models of some of the places where they would be in Taiwan. And so the entire range of military operations, providing every option that they would want. And these are rehearsals in earnest.
I mean, the date 2027 gets thrown around a lot, and often people misinterpret what it actually, when Xi Jinping used it, what it actually meant. He has told his military, U.S. intelligence says, to be ready, to have the capability to be able to take Taiwan by 2027. Is it your assessment that the PLA will have that capability by 2027?
First, one of the problems with the 2027 number for me, and when I'm a civilian someday, I will never say 2027 again. Just for fun, I won't say 20 or 7 ever again. This is not a go-by date. It's a be-ready-by date. The original date was 2035, which was pushed up. And you'll know that 2027 is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army. And when you say, are they going to be ready or not, that presumes that you're operating in a base 2, 1 or 0, ready or not. And you'll all know it is gradations of readiness. And there are certain conditions where they might effect an invasion or some kind of coercive behavior before they believe they're fully ready. Mm-hmm. And that is that they've invested so much of the Chinese Communist Party's legitimacy in the Taiwan question that if there were some broaching of their 2005 anti-secession law, if Taiwan were to declare its independence, if they saw independence or if they saw unification irrevocably moving away from them, by law, under those conditions, that would be when they would go in the ready state that they are. And so as they get to 2027, there are some benchmarks where we've seen them reach what we believe were 2027 thresholds in 2023. And so they are gaining more readiness.
What would a couple of those be?
The rocket force, mm-hmm. and then their constellation in space that supports their intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and C2 enterprises. Mm-hmm. So I don't think of it as will they be ready in 2027? 2027 is not a holiday that we can't say, well, we can get ready by 2027 and it won't be a day before, everything's going to be okay. Let's kick this can down the road from 26 to 27. because we've got a little period of grace. There's no grace period. So accordingly, the closer we get to 2027, and it's getting pretty big in the windshield. 2027's in a year and a half. That number becomes less salient, and it's really about the conditions around their level of readiness, and then the calculations that they would make would be a combination of their own belief in their own readiness, about their belief in Taiwan's ability to thwart an invasion, and about the capability, will, and probability of allied assistance to Taiwan.
I'm not going to ask you what surprised you most in this role, because you were Pac Fleet Commander before. You've been looking at this for a long time. But I would like to know, what is the one thing China has done in the last year that you think is the most significant, that you think about and have to grapple with how to either respond or how it impacts your deterrence?
I think the rates of change on the depth and breadth of their exercises is the one non-linear effect that I've seen in the last year that wakes me up at night or keeps me up at night. And I already explicated that to an extent. I said 1, 6, 42, and so that is one of the, and then another, because is the levels and frequency of pressurization around Taiwan, the Straits Thunder, the Joint Sword exercises, their sensitivity to public statements that immediately result in an operation. So examples include, but the examples of the depth and breadth include the circumnavigation and live fire exercise in the South Pacific, in the vicinity of Australia and New Zealand.
For first time.
Yes. Yeah. And they're stretching their legs. They're becoming, a global force, bit by bit.
I know you're a history buff. If you were to look back in history, what period in history do you think is analogous to where we are today, or closest?
Yes. And on this, I have even days and odd days. So some days I think it's 1938, and there's a rising power in East Asia. It is an expansionist power. It seeks to express its hegemony by picking off its neighbors one-on-one and using the power of its economy and its ability to coerce to extract advantage from one by one for regional hegemony en route to a global plan, which is the stated goal by 2049. And that's one possibility. And with a United States that is powerful, but feels like it's behind on the ramp. And then, yet at the same time, from 2021, 2022, even really since WTO entry, every year was good news for the People's Republic of China. Every year was explosive growth, the explosive growth of their military, the growing confidence that you saw, investment in the country, foreign direct investment in the country. And then the PRC's own hide our capabilities, bide our time behavior over that time. And now, for the first time in a generation, you do hear bad news coming out of the People's Republic of China. Purges of officials for corruption, economic news that of this prospect of lying flat for their youth unemployment, demographic challenges, and then you feel that sort of a tightening authoritarianism of its government. Leads you to think, in 1978, maybe let's call it the autumn of 1979, American confidence was in its nadir. with the hostage crisis, the hollow force, double-digit inflation, double-digit interest rates, and a lack of confidence worldwide. We had no idea that in just 9, 10, 11 years, the Soviet Union, whom we thought was King Kong and we will bury you, and we had legitimate fears. Remember the day after on 1983, the TV series? 10 years later, there was complete collapse, reminiscent of the sun also rises. How did you go broke? A little bit at a time and then all at once. And then for America's trajectory, we'd like to see this awakening and a growing unity. We'd like to see investment in the U.S. military that had real combat power, as we do now, but on a significant trajectory to meet, for deterrence, to meet the rising threat. So I don't know that if it's 1938 or it's 1978, the exigence, our behavior should be the same, no matter what it is.
You mentioned the purges in the military, and you now have at least 2 members of the Central Military Commission gone. It's like you have 2 members of the Joint Chiefs who are not there. People generally say it's because they're accused of corruption, but some of the people who've gone have had a kind of a Taiwan connection, worked in a province with Xi Jinping, their roles involved looking at Taiwan. Do you have any suggestion that it's not just about corruption, that there might be something else going on?
Well, I think one is that I know that corruption, as we would call it, has been a part of it, and that anti-corruption has been a mission for the General Secretary since his rise to power. And this is for multiple reasons. In the United States, the military gains tremendous respect as a profession, second only to nursing in the United States, rightly so. Number 2 is that...
thank you for not saying the journalists are right down at the bottom, only above Congress, but... And apologies to all members in the room.
Present company excluded. Number 2, in the United States of America, America's generous and pays military families a fair wage. And number 3, in America, there's opportunities for veterans after service. In the People's Republic of China, it is not a respected profession, and the pay is a mere pittance. And post-retirement, there is not a generous retirement at the end, and enough to continue to take care of your family and other opportunities, not in industry, but across the board, which is where most veterans go. And so that, and the country pouring money into its defense, sets every condition for corruption, as we would call it. There is an element of the potential association among certain of the leaders, and so there is all of that is kind of the actions of a potentially, I'd say, is the potential for cliques within their military, and a cautionary tale where I think a lot of people would like to just whistle past the graveyard over these removals, and undoubtedly, the removal of these highly experienced officers who have my respect is going to degrade their readiness. But is purging behavior, have we seen that be a precursor ever to conflict? And so keeping an eye on that, I think, is a matter of duty for Indo-Pacific Command and for the national security enterprise.
I want to ask you about Ukraine, but just to the organizers, the clock here doesn't seem to be working. So when we get to about 8:40, if someone could wave at me, and then I'll open up to the floor. Now I'm in trouble. What lessons have both the U.S. and, do you think, China learned from Ukraine, and how might those lessons apply to a conflict over Taiwan?
Yes, I think there are important lessons on this, and I'll start with the United States. And it's a duty for all of us to ingest and act on every single lesson that we can. And so on this, the power of many, many small, unmanned, cheap, no-regret capabilities. For some of their unmanned aerial systems, the life cycle is 6 days. And if it costs hundreds or thousands, that can be deployed at no regret, which means it goes out and it comes back. And if it doesn't come back, I don't have a regret on that.
So that could be a drone or a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and either one-way attack drones, which we used to call missiles, but the difference between a drone and a missile is that if your missile costs $2 million, it is not a no-regret deployment. It had better be used to the right cause, and you'll have some precious few. But the original definition of drone was a worthless insect that had one job. And that's why we call them drones, and that's how you differentiate between a missile and a drone. Lesson 2 is the first really profound employment of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and 21st century infotech into our militaries. And we're not seeing much autonomous vehicles, but we are seeing mass data analytics and then rapid learning within networks to be able to overcome challenged operating networks, and on the ability to execute rapid targeting cycles. That is, the ability to see, understand, decide, I'm going to strike this to achieve this effect, act, assess, and then learn. And we're seeing a lot of that. It is not the end-all, be-all of conflict in the Pacific, because there is 7,000 miles of contested ocean that we have to deal with. This war is greatly an attrition war along a salient. We did see some sea denial operations in the Black Sea that were very effective, that we also take great learning from. Now, for the People's Republic of China, I do believe that they see this conflict, and from a training and doctrine standpoint, to assault, the planners plan for a 3-to-1 ratio in order to effect assault. Those of you that have had service in the ground forces will know that inherently already. This ground in history is some of the easiest ground of all to go across. It's flat, not many mountains, natural frontiers, and yet Russia, who had gained a lot of respect in Syria, and some of us, Jack, Jimmy, have had firsthand experience on that. And so the Russians had used Syria as a laboratory, and yet its opening elements of the conflict were quite bungled, and they are paying a terrible price as they go through this conflict. And wars are incredibly unpredictable, and this unpredictability has got to affect his calculus.
So is the Chinese lesson, you think, the inverse of the U.S. lesson, or are there different lessons the Chinese might be taking?
I'm sure that China is trying to learn every lesson that we are. And it's my job to make sure that there's no line loss in the lessons from the European theater to the Indo-Pacific theater, from the Middle East theater to the Indo-Pacific theater because there are important lessons to be learned there. And our joint force is designed that we bring those lessons in. And those that are on my team will know that I'm never satisfied that we are closely enough connected that we're learning those lessons. The relationship between the United States and our allies, and the fact that and the relationships within Europe are such that we're set up to more closely learn those lessons, because the PRC does not acknowledge any assistance to Russia, and its assistance is mostly the provision of machine tools and the provision of semiconductors as Russia has rebuilt its war machine. We are designed to take on those lessons. It's a duty to do so, but you'll never see complacency from me that we're better able to learn those lessons than the PLA is.
I'd just like to point out that growing up in Dublin, a drone was actually the guy at the end of the bar on a Saturday night who wouldn't shut up. So there's different kinds.
He had one job.
Yes, he did, and did it well. I'm going to jump around a little bit because you talked about AI and data. I went to ChatGPT, and I put in, I'm interviewing Admiral Paparo. What should I ask him? It came up with about 12 questions. And the one that I liked the best was, ask Admiral Paparo to discuss the role that new tech such as AI, unmanned systems, and hypersonic weapons will play in shaping future conflict in the Indo-Pacific. And my add-on question is, how are you personally, and how is Indo-PACOM using AI right now?
I think that this is, for the most part, when you're looking at missile on missile, ship on ship, even drone on drone, you're having linear effects from one to the other. And for those of you that are in the kind of arts of ops analysis, you can just do a simple Lanchester problem. And on attrition warfare, you can make a determination of who wins. But the effects of these systems are going to have greatly non-linear effects on the system. Who can see, understand, decide, act, assess faster? Who can unlock the creativity of their forces on the battlefield such that you have perfect fidelity on the commander's intent, but complete creativity at the tactical edge to be employing? How at the strategic level are we employing AI? I go into a war game and we'll do the ops and intelligence, we'll do a commander's update brief, but at one point, every eye looks at me and says like, okay, boss, what are we going to do for the next 24, 96, and 14 days? And so at those levels, there is a vast database, even in open source, which is incredibly valuable. And then within our networks. And if we can use large language models to refine our decision making, and then further on, if we can use agentic tools and/or tools that do computational game theory that in the game determine what game are we playing and help us with moves, not to replace our decision making, but to augment, because we ultimately are accountable for these actions, and lest we forget that. And in this race, we're in a race for compute, for data, for the talent, and for the policy that determines it, that puts all of that together so that we can use these tools to achieve the non-linear effects on our actions. And so, like in the aluminum smelting business, there's this thing called a theoretical limit. That is ore in and energy in and refined aluminum out. It also applies to many other processes. Who could get to the theoretical limit and use these machine tools to get to the theoretical limit, to achieve these non-linear effects, to get out of this Lanchester attrition model, and to get us where we're in the right place at the right time, doing the right things against the right centers of gravity, and we are employing every piece of data, everything that a machine can do, it's doing. And everything a human must do, we're doing. And that's but one way. And so in this race, it is first a race on the tech itself, a race on the kind of models, that are being employed on that, and a race to see who gets up on the step and can employ it better. And you know, my intention is to win this race. And we are a AI-enabled headquarters, by which I mean is that you know, we are actively operating a large language model to aid our decision making. And on this, you know, there'll be a bell curve of AI users. On one trace, you'll have the Luddites who say, no, this is bull, it hallucinated for me and I don't trust it. This will never approach a human being, and will be non-adopters. You'll have on another side the crutch players who are afraid or feel unable to make decisions themselves and will, like our children do in their college papers, you know, give me 10 pages on the Russian Revolution. But at the zenith, where we have to get everybody, is that point where our prompts, our usage, gets the very best out of the models and gets the very best out of our human beings and affects all the very best. And then, of course, how we execute functions that are interrelated to ensure that we know what's happening in the battle space, we're affecting the enemy's cognition, we're moving to the right spot, employing the weapons under the right kind of protection, and sustaining the force. And so that process is smooth operationally. And then at the tactical level, compute on the edge, swarming tactics, and how do we affect that same thing even at the unit level. And you know, we have profound efforts going on right now across all of those layers. And am I satisfied with it? No. But you pay me to never be satisfied with where we are.
So I'm going to quote Admiral Samuel Paparo back to you. In November, you told Brookings that it was time for straight talk about the magazine gap. And then separately, before Congress, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about Chinese air superiority and how they were getting much better. And then you said, but I have game too. So I want you to step back and say, if you look at the balance of forces, not globally, but in China's backyard where a Taiwan conflict would happen, how would you assess the US and China right now?
Well, first, I will tell you with complete sincerity of heart, mind, and soul, that we, the United States, would prevail in a conflict as it stands now with the force that we have right now. You know, we have some key advantages: undersea, space, counter space, and then the ability to affect the force from the surface to the Kármán line. I am confident in our ability to prevail by bringing all of our tools to bear that we've got right now. But our trajectory on on really every force element that is salient is a bad trajectory. PRC, 2 submarines per year. United States, 1.4 submarines per year. PRC, 6 combatants per year. United States, 1.8 combatants a year. PRC fighters, 120 per year. United States, you know, roughly 90 per year. And you may be of the mind that, well, nobody is going to need fighters anymore. And all of this is going to be done by unmanned capability. Please, let's do. Except we ain't there yet. And you send an unmanned capability, you don't do a dangerous thing. You don't send a human being to do a dangerous thing that a machine can do. You don't lose human agency on offense. And the more defensive you are, the more you must rely on a machine to do better things faster, because the morality has shifted to defending your force. But it requires a network in order to maintain that human agency. And the network is going to be contested. The network is going to have the bandwidth, the frequency agility, the encryption, and we're in a race on compute. And compute is what enables us to dominate the EW environment and or defend ourselves and become resilient in the EW environment. And the vast distances, sea control and air superiority remain requirements for the United States. There are opening conditions. Your unmanned capability will be no more than a high-tech petting zoo if you don't have the conditions under which you can infill that force. And oh, by the way, there are 80,000 Americans in Taiwan. There are 130 million allies in Japan, include 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, 5th Air Force. There are 130 million allies in the Republic of Philippines. And our economies are very much interdependent to the point that it's important, and we're going to have to contest air superiority with our would-be adversaries. And we do that, and we're going to have to contest maritime superiority in order to protect the force, to defend the force, to sustain the force. And so to move away from that, is to ignore what is time full and what is time less. And we've got to make the right choices on timefulness and timelessness. And when I said it's time for straight talk, there was inference that said, like, oh, Paparo's against what we're doing in X theater. My job is to take all the knowledge that I can from the other theaters and to be the most faithful executor of national policy that I can be. That's basic Samuel Huntington. So the reference there is building out the magazines, the rates of production of the capabilities that we're expending and the depth of the magazines that we have, and building out those rates. And that's a place where we have to be straight with each other. We have to link arms and get after the problems.
So we're going to open up to the floor, but while the mics are getting ready, let me just quickly ask you, what was the one question you were really hoping I wouldn't ask you?
What's your favorite color?
All right, I won't ask you that. Gentleman here in the front, on the right.
Thank you very much. Ishan Thur, Washington Post.
Nice to see you again.
Admiral, I think it would be an understatement to say in broader terms that there's been a degree of rupture between the current administration and the previous one. But when it comes to, I'm curious, when it comes to Indo-Pacific strategy, from what you're seeing so far, I'd like you to speak to the kind of continuity, perhaps, that's in motion, if you see it. The Biden administration, folks there like to talk about the existing alliance structure there, the bolstered security partnerships they had as a lattice work. I'm curious in the Trump era if we need to update our sartorial or fabric-based analogies when it comes to the American relationships there.
So one is that maybe the only issue that both sides can agree on is the exigency of readiness in the Western Pacific and the importance of the PRC, among others. There's a North Korea threat, there's a significant Russian threat, and the requirement to deter conflict with the very real capability to employ. And on allies and partners, thus far, we've seen continuity in the security relationships with messages of support of the Japan-Korea trilateral, of the transformed Japan C2, USFJ, next, of our AUKUS requirements. And so that continuity is something that benefits the U.S. strategically. And even, presently, you've seen in the department's statement of its priorities a focus on warrior ethos, a focus on lethality, a focus on reforming the defense acquisition system, defending the homeland, focusing on the Indo-Pacific and allies and partners. That was the statement that just started on. So I think this fabric is quite healthy. I think all of our leaders there are practitioners of realpolitik. They're not bound to take up the emotion of it, but are clear-eyed about the security challenges. And I see a strong fabric within our alliances and partnerships.
Over here, Courtney, and then the gentleman over on the right.
Hi, Courtney Kuby with NBC News. You're getting all the journalists tonight, sorry. I'm sorry to ask you about the year which we don't speak of, but 2027. Your time at PACOM will presumably be done May or so of 2027, and I'm still not clear if you think you actually will be in the role if there is some major action against China by China against Taiwan. And then, what do you think the American people's will is for an actual war with China? I mean, these are the American people just elected Donald Trump on an America First platform. Do you think Americans would support the kind of conflict that you were just laying out there?
Thank you. So first, when you become a flag officer, you subscribe to an ethos, and that ethos is that you go where you're told, you go happy, including home. And so, truly, what this means is that the ethos is to stay in the role until the commander-in-chief decides that it's time for another commander. And it's an important ethos, and you know, it is an ethos. I don't know, but I will be subscribing to the ethos. On the question of are the American people ready to go to war, I sometimes encounter this in discussions when somebody says, why invest in these capabilities? Because I don't think America is going to go to war anyway. And on the first front, that doesn't matter to me because the adversary has got capability, and I owe options to the commander-in-chief. And it will be up to the commander-in-chief if America does go to war. On the second front, I think a lot of people have made the mistake of saying America's not going to go to war on that. And you may have heard this quote, "I fear we have awakened a slumbering giant and filled him with a terrible resolve." That quote is from December 7th, 1941, and it wasn't an American that made it. Then 5 years later, after the most deadly conflict of all time, the United States commits to conflict in Korea. And then 17 years after Vietnam, America puts 600,000 troops in the desert for Desert Storm against a large, notable army noted for its employment of weapons of mass destruction over Kuwait. And so there is an element within the United States that when it feels sufficiently threatened, our country becomes unified and serious. But that notwithstanding, there's a capability, there's also an intent expressed by our would-be adversaries. And so I owe my best military advice over what kind of force is capable of deterring that by the real capability to fight and win. And when I say best military advice, with the accent on military, my advice isn't best, it's my best, focused on the military advice that is completely deferent to civilian leadership, offering the options that they deserve. And when leadership, and that is the judiciary and the executive together, make a decision to accept the risk of a force that is less optimized to meet that threat, then the leadership has accepted the risk of that. but I owe the ability to fight and win with the advice on how to build the force, and then to do my level best to correctly, optimally effect that force to fight and win. And we have this tendency, again, in a binary base 2, 1 or 0 thing about win or lose. But there's a bill no matter what. That bill is human beings, it's military capability, it's money, and it's time. More capability buys that bill down. And that's how the risk is expressed, how I express that risk. And so every piece of capability that's salient, that puts America on a better footing, is buying fewer lost human beings, more capability that's left after the conflict to continue to effect national strategy in support of our interests. And then the other is, is that the money, the time of the conflict, how much treasure the United States expends, how much early leverage ensures that we're not paying a pound of cure. And so that's my approach to Taiwan. A lesson in history is that people are always saying America will never get in the fight, but it's not been the track record. When America feels threatened, or we feel like a cause is worthy and affects our interests at the second derivative or the third derivative, unified, serious, resolved.
Chris. Oh, I'm sorry.
Admiral Peter MacKay, Canada. Grateful friend and ally. And on behalf of another nation, I want to say thank you to you for your leadership throughout your career, your continued service. My question is out of your jurisdiction, geography, but the High North, and concerns around the activities not only of Russia, who are there and we can see from there, but what's happening in terms of China and their ambitions, because in addition to aircraft carriers, and you referenced their investments, is icebreakers that they're currently building. And their self-declared near-Arctic neighborship. So I just would love to get your thoughts on the strange things that are done beneath the midnight sun in the high Arctic, and how serious a threat you perceive this to be, because there is a lot of water there that is opening up. The ice is changing clearly, and the Northwest Passage is accessible by both ends. Certainly the United States, but all of the Arctic Council nations have a lot of work to do to protect that northern flank here in North America. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the United States is an Arctic state, as we all well know, as is Canada. And in fact, all of our allies, all of the Arctic states have got, deep, if not allied, relationships with the United States. And then the United States has a significant stake as an Arctic state. And the PRC is a near Arctic state, the way the Philadelphia Flyers are a Canadian hockey team. So
I was waiting for that.
We must meet asymmetries with symmetry, lest our adversaries will exploit the space and will impose their will upon us. And we see both states imposing their will upon others and exploiting commons and, in fact, claiming space that is not sovereign to their country. And accordingly, I'm very strongly an advocate for capability in the Arctic. It is also part of my area of responsibility, along with EUCOM and NORTHCOM. And these partnerships are important too, to ensure that there's no seam, as the seams come together as they do on the poles. And so building icebreakers, having that capability in the high north, and Russia and China had its biggest formation in the Bering Sea this year. So I could not endorse that more strongly. I'll tell you on Canada, Canada's contribution on sanctions enforcement in the Western Pacific with her frigates, Canada's reconnaissance aircraft, and also exercise of freedom of navigation, including multi-nation exercises of that, have a profound deterrent effect. And I am grateful for the close partnership that I have with General Carignan and with the Canadian Pacific Fleet, and I tip my hat.
So I think we have time for one last question, and I want to refute my national stereotype that the Irish go on too long. So please keep it really short.
I'll be quick, Admiral. Great seeing you again. We talked a lot about Xi, and sounds like we understand him pretty well. We get a lot of intelligence on the Chinese. In my view, he's somewhat predictable compared to the other authoritarian in the region, Kim Jong-un. So I'm just interested in how much time you spend thinking about Kim and the fact that we don't have a lot of knowledge about his decision-making, even, personal issues. And, how much do you worry about, we always talk about Taiwan, and that's where the conflict will start, but now with the relationship that Kim has with Putin and the transfer of technology, I often feel like we should be given a little bit more focus on the North Korean problem. I just want to get your views on that.
Thank you, Senator. One, I fully affirm the unpredictability of Kim Jong-un. And on that front, his behavior in recent times, which is he has blown up the two connecting roads, east and west, that connected the north and south. They're building a wall inside the military demarcation line. They have sent balloons with garbage, trash, even human excrement at one point towards the south. And some of his behavior demonstrates a desire to ensure that they close their border to outside influences, because you could make a case that North Korea's system was at least somewhat competitive with South Korea's system in the early 1950s, 60s, maybe even 70s. Today, you can make no case at all about where South Korea is, and I think there is a significant fear that if the North Koreans catch wind of how their fellow Koreans are living in the South, it could be troublesome. These intentions could turn overnight. We are in armistice with North Korea, and we should not forget that ever. And now North Korea's reach out to Russia is going to result in more capability coming to North Korea. And this is a dangerous and unpredictable potential adversary. And I remain equally humble about Xi Jinping's intentions also, just because you pay me to do so.
On that note, I'm very glad you're being paid. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Rick Davis.
Very very much. Thank you very much, Admiral Paparo, Dimitri. What a wonderful program. Let's get another round of applause for our keynote speaker and his inquisitor. How are you guys doing? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we've had a fantastic start to the Sedona Forum, our 12th Sedona Forum here in Sedona. I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. I am the only thing standing between you and dessert out on the terrace, so I'll make it very short. Tomorrow morning, the program will start here in this room at 8:30 in the morning, and we'll have breakfast starting at 7 o'clock out on the terrace for anybody who needs a little morning carbohydrates. There'll be a little Southwestern flair there, so it'll be a lot of fun. I would like to thank a few people. Cindy, the McCain family, thank you very much for your hosting of this. Michael Bidwell, congratulations again for the In the Arena Award. President Michael Crow, for all the support that ASU gives to us. I'd like to have special recognition for all of our donors, both to the Sedona Forum and to the McCain Institute. Without you, we would not be in this room having this fantastic conversation. Please, a round of applause for all our donors. And I'd like to give special recognition to the Washington Post, which does not happen very often. They are our media partner, and they've been very helpful in supplying us with great talent, but also some wonderful ideas to help enrich our agenda. So please, a round of applause for the Washington Post. So thank you very much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We have a spectacular program tomorrow. We have more on China, but a lot of other places around the world need our attention, and we're going to give them a full